G'day, I'm Ben Dowling and I'm here with Britta Hale to talk to you today about secure message authentication against active man-in-the-middle attacks. So Signal and secure messaging protocols like Signal are often referred to as asynchronous protocols, which means that the communicating partner doesn't have to be online in order for you to send messages to them. In order to facilitate end-to-end encryption on the very first message, users will have to upload public key material to a service called the delivery service. Alice then at some point, if they want to contact Bob and Bob is not online, contacts the delivery service instead, grabs Bob's public keying material and uses that to encrypt messages to Bob. The question that Alice must now ask is, how do I know that the public keys that the delivery service gave me were not maliciously generated by the delivery service, allowing them to read my messages to Bob? Well, Signal has a feature that helps prevent this, called safety numbers. The core idea here is that both of the users will generate a hash of their long-term identifiers and their long-term public keys. The users will then concatenate these values together and then create some sort of representation of this, either via QR code or via numeric codes. At some point, the two users will meet up and compare their safety numbers. And if they match, then they know that the long-term public keys haven't been modified in transit. The claim that the Signal application makes is that this will allow them to verify the security of the user's encryption. We identify a number of weaknesses with this safety number construction, a couple of which I'll walk you through now. The first being is that there's no session authentication. None of these safety numbers are tied to any of the sessions that they came from, instead being computed from purely public and long-term information. You can see that if an attacker is able to compromise the long-term secret key of the responder, they're able to trivially create a pre-key bundle that is indistinguishable from one that Bob himself will create, indeed using the same long-term key. And then when the users create their safety numbers and then compare them, this user authentication phase goes through without a hitch, since it's only comparing the long-term public key that the adversary has not changed. In addition, and interestingly from a modeling perspective, is if we consider an adversary that is able to modify messages between the device and the user, in addition to being able to modify messages between the two devices. You can see that if an adversary is able to introduce some malware to your phone that allows them to display some sort of overlay, well then it's trivial for them, since the safety numbers are computed from public information, to forge the expected safety number, and thus allow the user authentication phase to match without a hitch. From these observations, we're able to introduce two contributions. The first is a security model that actually allows us to capture user-mediated authentication protocols, a protocol where the user is a core part of the process, and we call these meta protocols. In addition, we introduce a modification to the Signal key exchange and Signal safety number features to achieve session authentication and per epoch authentication, which we call the modified device to user Signal authentication or Medusa protocol. I'll leave you with my co-author, Britta Hale.
We now consider the mediated epoch three-party authentication model, META. This model is in two parts. First of all, there is a device-to-device channel. Then there is a user-to-device channel. The user-to-device channel covers things like user interaction or display, which could be affected if there was malware on the device. We consider these separately with separate queries for each. On the device-to-device channel, we allow three types of queries. Again, these are fairly normal queries such as send-device, reveal, which provides the secret state, and corrupt, which provides long-term secrets. Under a normal analysis on Signal, this device-to-device might be considered to capture things like forward security and PCS. On the user-to-device channel, we actually mirror the queries in a similar way. We have a send-device query and a send-user query, and we have two extra queries. One, the corrupt user, allows the adversary to control the user's actions, namely what's input to the device. This could also be interpreted as other types of malware on the device or attacks that could affect the inputs going in. For example, there's a tap and ghost attack on Bluetooth that, although it's not controlling the user's actions, it controls how those inputs are interpreted through the display. We also have a reveal user query, which captures the display itself, what's shown to the user. This might capture things like malware that doesn't actually have access to the secret state of the device, but can affect the display itself. Using these combinations of queries, we look at two separate compromise scenarios. One is a compromised device scenario, and one is a compromised user. For the compromised device, we allow complete unrestricted access to the secret state of the device or the adversary, but they're not allowed to compromise the user's actions. So we should not get a false acceptance if we're dealing with a secure protocol. On the compromised user side, we actually capture a form of PCS because we still allow compromise of the device secret so long as it's not on the current epoch. We capture very typical things like forward secrecy and post-compromise security from other models, so allowing some queries, just not on the test session. Also, we allow compromise of the user. Unfortunately, Signal is insecure in both the compromised user and compromised device settings, as has already been described in the attacks at the beginning of this presentation. In simple terms, this is because safety numbers are currently computed over purely public information and are not reliant on per epoch information. To fix this, we propose a modification of the Signal Authentication Protocol, Medusa. This modification is in three parts. First part is we modify the key schedule to compute an extra authentication secret per epoch. The second part is that we maintain a hash over all publicly exchanged information between the parties. Finally, we compute safety numbers differently than in Signal. These are computed per epoch, meaning that we better align the confidentiality guarantees that Signal aims to achieve and the authenticity guarantees. Also, these are computed over a transcript of all the public keys exchanged, meaning that we are authenticating for past epochs as well. We include a role for role separation and to prevent reflection attacks. And we maintain two of these in this state to account for potential asynchronicity between the parties. Analyzing Medusa in the meta model achieves the following results. Here, E refers to the eavesdropper on the user to device channel, and we consider it both with and without this eavesdropper allowed. Display refers to whether or not fingerprints are displayed or a QR code might be displayed on a device. In other words, a static display, whereas scan refers to, for example, a scanning of a QR code, and much like how there's a distinction in the roles in current devices. As you can see, the compromised device setting can be protected against. In fact, by allowing per epoch authentication and deriving secrets as we do in Medusa, this is a fairly easy change to make. The compromised user setting is far more challenging, and it depends on the capabilities that you want in your device and for a user to authenticate. It is achievable to protect against this through a scan-to-scan by separating the roles, but that does require more user interaction. We discussed these and the feasibility of these different combinations in the paper. This brings us to the end of the presentation. In short, Signal's current authentication protocol means that it does not achieve PCS in case there's an active attacker, which is really the realistic scenario it aims to protect against. Namely, why are we deriving so many keys for a ratcheted key exchange, if not to protect in the case of compromise? Now, by considering a Medusa type protocol or analyzing other variants of it inside of a meta model, we can capture the active attacker and actually know whether or not there's a man in the middle for your conversations.